Software supply chain security. In this section, we're going to be discussing the essential parts and the reasons why software supply chain security is so important to software development organizations these days. Remember, in earlier modules, we discussed the fact that software is composed of not only the code that developers build, but the third-party dependencies that they use to do their job, right? It'll expedite what they do. And the thing is, 99% of the Fortune 500 companies utilize open source software. Actually, all software out there is actually composed of third-party software, free and open source software that makes up 85 to 90% of the software that you produce. And the thing is that there's issues with it. There are actually security threats and issues. And you'll hear the term CVE, right, which is vulnerability and exposure. JFrog, we are a CNA, we are a CE number authority, and we produce these CVEs. We make sure that the software components of third-party false transitive dependencies the software developers are using are safe and secure because it's on a constant rise. We've seen over the years the number of packages that have exploits or vulnerabilities or exposures in them has grown year over year. And how do you provide a platform to companies that you're dealing with to help ensure safety and protection of the software they produce, but not only from a financial aspect, because we see this all the time, that when we're looking at these things, that, software dependency models is the equivalent of, a developer going out and finding a USB key with some library, some stuff on it. You don't know what it is, right? You do a pip install, go get npm install, docker pull, whatever it is for the pulling from these third-party sources is basically the equivalent of finding a USB key that you find on the street and plugging into a production server. But the thing is that companies need to protect themselves in terms of vulnerabilities and exposures, because it's not just the financial burden that can be placed on the company, loss of revenue and things like that, but worse, loss of reputation. If I lose my data to because of a software vulnerability to a company I use, I am going to be generally skeptic of that company going forward because they put me in an awkward position. And since we're saying that, how do you go ahead and protect yourself as an organization? So we see these headlines all the time, right? And your developers are aware of it, security people are aware of it. The thing is that these exposures and these leaks and these potential threats and issues are happening constantly. There's always malicious packages that can possibly disrupt your organization by leaking your data or doing things like that. So understanding this, how do you protect yourself? And when we talk about JFrog, we talk about managing the entire software supply chain from your developer or shift left. We'll talk about that all the way down to your runtime. Now, when we look at what we have here, this is a standard software supply chain. You have a developer. A developer is building a piece of software. He uses third-party transitive dependencies from remote sources. People he doesn't know, he or she doesn't know, I should actually say, right? Pulling in these sources to do what they do. They build their software to make their job easier, but we also don't want to have it so that they put a lot of burden in place for them to have to go and investigate all these things. Let them do their job. Be creative. They're artisans. Their code is their craft. The mediums they choose is the language they choose in order to enable the things that they're doing. And so saying this, you look at it, they build software, they put it into a location, Artifactory in this case. They use CI servers to build the software itself. They might do UAT testing, some other, QA testing. It might go into a staging environment, then to a production environment. It gets deployed as a web service to a device, to your customers. Whatever the software does, it all falls in line like that. And if you look at the red components, these are all susceptible areas as a developer in which your company can be possibly affected by these issues. And when we look at all the potential threats that happen in the software supply chain, it's incredible. Whether it's malicious packages from these third-party transitive dependencies, it might be a 0 day. Something you've been using. Look at Log4j. It disrupted so many industries. It was used everywhere, but when that vulnerability was found, the destruction was immense across. Or SolarWinds. That was the one that rocked everybody. It affected 18,000 organizations globally. Or is there an exploit, right? A CVE that might be a potential threat. It might be something like as simple as a code injection or something or cross dependency or lots of other things that could be potentially threatening there too. What about secrets? This is a huge one. We're going to talk about secrets as part of our advanced security product. But with secrets, the biggest thing here is, we did scans of Docker images in Docker Hub. And we found that a majority of them had some sort of secret, whether it's an API key, an access token, whatever it is. You're actually giving the keys to somebody who could be potentially nefarious and malicious that could actually attack your organization based on stuff that you accidentally gave them. Also, misconfiguration. That's a huge one. We have the ability in our platform to detect misconfigurations of certain applications or services like Nginx. Did you remember to enforce TLS when you instantiated the service? Are you using Terraform? Did you remember to turn off authorization equals none? So all your ACLs, all your access controls, all work properly. Also, too, have these been tampered with? Binary spoofing, typo squatting. These are all things you'll hear all the time in the software supply chain industry, and they affect corporations a lot. And millions upon millions of dollars is spent every year trying to protect organizations. And on top of that, all the way down to production, your runtime. And here at JFrog, we're going to have runtime security for things like Kubernetes to make sure you're not actually exposing any potential threats that could disrupt your organization. So when we look at the software supply chain, there are so many potential threats and attacks. And organizations know this, but how do you consolidate it? How do you bring it together so you have complete end-to-end software supply chain security that is both automated, manual, and also to runtime enabled? So when you look at this, these are all the potential threats that can potentially hit a company. Think about this. Every single part of the software supply chain, the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, could be affected by potential security threats and risks.